And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Out to east of the Great River, our great friend Mike Hammond joining us. Of course, Mike and I know each other from his congressional campaign. He is the attorney for Gun Owners of America. And who would have thought, Mike, 24 years ago, you'd be in Virginia and I would be in Idaho, a far cry from our New Hampshire days. Good morning, sir.
Well, I mean, my home is in New Hampshire. I'm there 183 days a year, but for these 182 days, I'm at Gun Owners of America in Springfield, Virginia.
Sure. It's wonderful, though, how time has flown between us, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of old memories of Boise, Idaho, and other things. As you know, before I campaigned for Congress, I worked for Senator James McClure, and I was manager for the McClure-Volkmer Firearms Owners Protection Act. And for Senator Steve Sims, also of Idaho, I drafted the amendment to rebuild Solidarity, which is credited with being responsible for the collapse of the Soviet bloc. So I have a lot of great memories of Idaho's senatorial delegation.
Certainly, Senator Sims still doing great work, of course, as you are, Mike Hammond. So
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about something that's percolating around the country, and particularly here in Idaho. That'd be red flag laws.
Yeah, absolutely. They're billed by the left, drafted in Mike Bloomberg's back room, billed by the left as being sort of a moderate compromise, which all Republicans can embrace. But in fact, they're probably among the most insidious Orwellian aspects of the anti-gun agenda. What they are is this. Supposedly, shooters such as the one in Parkland, I can mention his name, but I'm not going to, because that's what he did the mass murder for, the publicity. Shooters such as that supposedly put out lots of red flags, and if we can take guns away from anyone we think are dangerous, supposedly that's going to stop mass killings like this. And the way they work is that the police or an angry ex, and it can be anyone in your family. I mean, Elizabeth Warren doesn't have much Indian blood, but one of those Indians could come in and try to get a red flag order on her. And so an angry ex or the police can come in and usually by a telephone call get a judge to issue an order stripping you of all of your constitutional rights. Now, remember, you have had no notice or no participation in that telephone call. The first thing you learn of it is when a SWAT team arrives at your front door, probably in the middle of the night, to ransack your house. And as we all know from Ruby Ridge, if you resist, they could arrest or even kill you under those circumstances. And we have a case in Ferndale, Maryland, a 60-year-old man, an angry relative had taken out a red flag order against him. And the reason was they didn't like his politics, thought he was too conservative and pro-gun. So the police came to his house at 5:17 in the morning. Not surprisingly, he didn't know who was knocking at his door and came to the door with a gun, and they shot him to death. There aren't many crimes in America for which you can be executed, much less summarily executed, but apparently being a gun owner is one of them.
Our great friend Mike Hammond joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning from Gun Owners of America. And were you surprised during the confirmation hearings that the Attorney General, William Barr, came out in favor of red flag laws?
I was disappointed. I can't say I was greatly surprised. I think he's been urged by some that he could support these, and this was gun control that Republicans would embrace. The answer to that was no. We blasted him a whole lot, and as he went around from senator to senator for his courtesy interviews, the senators hit him with the nasty anti-gun ramifications of his position. And basically his first response was, well, that's those people at Gun Owners of America, right? And his second response was to back up. He now says he would oppose any bill unless it had, quote, front-end due process. What that means is that you can't take out a secret order by a telephone call and use that to take away people's rights. Now, there's still a problem with stripping people of their constitutional rights because you perceive that they may be, quote, dangerous, close quote, according to some subjective standard. That's sort of is very similar to the Tom Cruise movie Minority Report, in which you're punishing people for thought crimes. However, the fact that he has denounced anything with a secret front-end telephone call order probably means that he has effectively denounced any red flag law which has been introduced in any state.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. How does this play out in Idaho? Obviously, we've been going back and forth with this Marsy's Law. Greg Pruitt from the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, a group that you guys know very well, has been fighting this. It looks like they're going to rewrite it, but here we have conservative Idaho, a state that you know very well, Mike Hammond, and all of a sudden, you've got this backdoor to gun control.
It was of concern to us, and the one thing I learned from Jim McClure is that you hammer out every single word of a new statute, because you're probably, if it goes horribly wrong in the courts, you're probably not going to be able to change it, and that certainly goes double for a constitutional amendment. You're never going to be able to change that. And so what Greg Pruitt had identified, and I think he was right, was that language in one of the drafts of Marsy's Law, which guaranteed constitutionally under the Idaho Constitution that any accuser have, quote, reasonable protection for the accused throughout the criminal justice process. I think we were concerned that the courts were going to interpret that to take away the guns of an accused person anytime he was accused based on nothing but the accusation. Now, most people who are accusers of a crime absolutely are serious and are speaking truthfully. There are some cases in which you're not. I don't think the accusers against Brett Kavanaugh were probably telling the truth, and certainly the accusers against the Duke lacrosse team weren't telling the truth. And so to take away your guns automatically, as a matter of Idaho constitutional law, anytime someone accuses you of a crime, we thought was going much too far. My understanding is they have now negotiated a version which struck that language.
How long do you think this will go on? Is this the new battlefront in states like Idaho? I think Oregon has passed the red flag laws, and they claim that, things are good. You have a problem, and Mike, all of a sudden you can just call it in, and people just peacefully take away your guns. As an attorney, as a person who has written legislation at the highest level, can you define for us how this just violates our Second Amendment rights?
Well, it, not only your Second Amendment rights, but also your Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment rights. You have a right, before you lose your constitutional rights, to a hearing before a judge, and probably to a lot of other things as well, including a jury trial, the right to a counsel if you can't afford it, and right down the lines. To simply make a telephone call and strip you of your constitutional rights is a really, really nasty development. I think it would be determined to be unconstitutional. But the last thing I'm going to do is rely on these packed courts to exercise constitutional rights, which I'm too lazy to stop from being passed into law. In Oregon, a majority of counties, my understanding is it's now about 8 of 10, the counties themselves have declared themselves sanctuary counties and have indicated they're not going to enforce these insidious pieces of legislation. So you're having a revolt in Oregon, in Washington, in New Mexico, in Colorado, in which a large number of counties have said, we're not going to enforce this. And today I am going to draft the prototype for counties in New York to use in order to withdraw from their state's Second Amendment abominations.
Indeed. How do you feel the Trump administration is doing as compared to the Obama administration?
I think that Donald Trump overall is probably the best president of my lifetime. Tragically, one of the areas in which he's not as good is guns, my issue. And at least when he sat down with Dianne Feinstein, he endorsed a whole lot of things which were really nasty gun control and which were in some respects even nastier than the stuff Obama was pushing. He has backed off from that. Recently, the administration has indicated that he would veto these universal background check national gun registry bill that just passed the House, and would also veto the legislation extending the waiting period to 30 days before you can get a gun. So I think in terms of his actions, he's done a very good job. In terms of the things which he sort of endorsed when he was stuck in a room with anti-gunners, well, we will forgive that if he doesn't take action on it.
Mike Hammond, if people want more information about the Gun Owners of America, what can they do, sir?
They can contact us at gunowners.org. It's GUNOWNERS.org.
Well, thank you. And once again, thank you for reminding us of your great longstanding ties to the Gem State, sir.
Thank you. And thank you, Idaho.
All right. Mike Hammond there at Gun Owners of America. Strangely, Mike didn't want to talk about the run for Congress back in 94, 95. Anyway, great that we have Mike Hammond on with us. Starting the day on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning. Coming up next, I had a chance over the weekend to do some research. I actually spent a lot of time with some folks, 3 or 4 hours, taking a look at the legislature. And I know you're going, oh, Kevin, it's Monday. Can't we go with the Trump talking about, the president talking about how bad everybody is? Well, we'll get to the CPAC speech. Over 2.5 hours of the president laying the smackdown. We'll get to that coming up. As always, we welcome you to join the conversation, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio.
Under the Green New Deal, which somebody described as a high school term paper written by a poor student. It's true. It's true. Who would believe it? It's so bad.
There we have it, the President of the United States at CPAC. Coming up this morning, we'll have Lars Larson joining us. He was at the CPAC, the President getting mixed reviews, most notably from Tara Setmeyer. She used to work for the Republicans. She is now working for CNN. This is what she had to say about those of us that love the President.
Republican Party is right now.
It just reconfirmed the fact that the Republican Party has completely bent its knee in a corrosive way to Donald Trump's ilk. And as someone who's been to probably, I don't know, over a dozen CPACs over my political career, and it was something I used to look forward to as a conservative because it was never a circus like this until the era of Donald Trump. It's really sunken into a place of embarrassment. Watching Republicans clap like seals to that lunacy of a speech yesterday by the President of the United States is just disheartening in a lot of ways, that this is where the party is going. You know, the fact that, but it was also very indicative of where President Trump is going and how he plans to run in 2020. It was very revealing. So for those who are going to run against Donald Trump, study that and see and look at it.
There we have it. So there's a young lady that's been to 12 CPACs. That's what we learned from her over the weekend, that Republicans that back the president, that like the economy, that like everything else, are nothing more than trained SEALs. By the way, friend, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, gas prices are down. People are working. The economy is roaring. And not one mention of that from the devious little liberals, right? Oh, the DLL, you little shenanigans. You keep running around and, again, with the fake news. The president did swear a few times at the speech. The president did lay the smackdown. And I think the dumbest thing I've heard over the weekend was by Matthew Dowd on This Week. We're going to get to him in a minute. But first, KIDO Talk Radio time is 624, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. 107's Eric Everett. And Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. So over the weekend, I'm sitting there laughing at myself because I call this work, where I'm watching all the Sunday shows. And, of course, remember, you can listen to Fox News Sunday right here on KIDO Talk Radio every Sunday beginning at 4 o'clock. So I'm watching the shows, and this week with George Stephanopoulos, Matthew Dowd, who worked for liberal Texas Senator Lloyd Bentsen, along with George W. Bush, had this to say, and I couldn't wait to hear what you have to think about it, basically saying that the rest of the country agrees with the libs.
Was in 2016.
No, I don't think so. And I don't think Michael Bloomberg is where Democratic rank-and-file voters are, particularly on economic questions, where rank-and-file Democrats have moved to the left of where they were 8 or 10 years ago. I think Inslee is an interesting figure. He's probably going to have trouble breaking through.
Isn't that the question for 80% of the field?
Yes, for a lot of them. But here's the interesting thing about Inslee, George. I think he could beat Donald Trump very easily. Generic Democrat who, Fox News hasn't instructed its America to hate and despise for the last several years.
He rose in the polls.
I think most people are not going to beat Donald Trump pretty easily. I think that's an important point about the general election. I don't think if the election were...
By the way, this is the panel discussion reacting to the news that Governor Inslee of Washington, who says, "Hi, everybody, I like global warming, and I'm a one-issue guy. Global warming, global warming, global warming," has jumped in. By the way, and I'm sure you heard today, the governor of dope-smoking Colorado has jumped in. So smoke a doobie and vote for the lib from Colorado. Good news for the future of the Democratic Party. I digress. We're going to try and get through one show without talking about the ills of marijuana. Before that, though, back to this issue concerning, the values of the Democratic Party versus the values of the Republican Party, the values of Donald Trump.
Tomorrow, he would more likely than not lose, but the election is not tomorrow.
No,
in a three-way.
He's different from other Democrats.
And what's the argument? The argument can't be, the president isn't a decent person. That can't be the argument. Republicans tried that in the primaries. It did not work against Donald Trump. They have to have an argument.
The Democratic Party has moved farther to the left, will move farther to the left by the end of this process than the Republican Party moved to the right over the last decade. And the most important and arguably influential Democrat isn't able to run. Congresswoman, Ocasio-Cortez. And she is the intellectual drive now on the Democratic Party. And we see these candidates falling over themselves to adopt her positions. And it's going to be very costly.
There you have it, Sarah Fagan hitting the double play, hitting it right into the ballpark. The libs are going too far into Libville, and yet Matthew Dowd, the Republican who served in the Bush White House, faux outrage Matthew, had this to say.
Democratic voters are.
But where most voters are much closer to where the Democrats are than the Republicans are. Mm-hmm. Most voters support dealing with climate change.
Healthcare.
Most voters don't support the wall at the border. Most voters support increased taxes on the very wealthy. So all of these things.
Well, wait a minute. Most people don't support the walls on the border? Most people don't support the taxing decrease? What is this guy? Where's he from?
Increased taxes on the very wealthy. So all of these things, the Democrats are much closer to where the country is than the Republicans
That's true in a polling context. It's not true when you lay out this policy.
There we have it. Thank you, Sarah Fagan, for that. Our time is 6:29. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. We'll go to Hank. Hank, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning. Yesterday, Robert Custer, the ex-president...
now, Hank, you know the rules. We have to talk about the topic, and then you can put in your agenda.
Okay. Well...
You're better than this, Hank. We're talking about, do the Democrats reflect the values of the Republican Party or of the mainstream folks in America?
Well, it's obvious they don't. In other words, if you believe in gay marriage, sex change, believe in killing babies outside of the womb, it's obvious that they don't practice what was traditional American culture, or you don't believe that, for instance, immigrants can come in this country and not be assimilated, and that it's a good thing to have the country balkanized into several different cultures, and then you can pit one group against the other and divide and rule. This is the model of the Democrat Party. I mean, that's a la Mayor Beater style here, which is he's trying to do in Boise. So, and he'll welcoming and make it sound like he's so kind-hearted and good, when in reality it's a cynical play to play off the groups against one another for power. So I mean, that's the Democrat Party for today. I just want to mention real briefly, and then briefly that Chester's article correcting Risch, head of the Foreign Relations Committee, and I wonder, since he's hired as a political consultant for Boise State, whether he reflects the opinions of Boise State. Is this what the people, the taxpayers and the students are paying for? And is this the official position of Boise State and their political consultant? I'd like to know. I think this is an injustice when Boise State's taken an official stance against Senator Risch. I think that we taxpayers should demand that Boise State stay out of politics in an official capacity. I think this is wrong. I also don't like the idea of Boise State being used as a means to basically hire Democrats, give them life and livelihood so they can run for office or build a structure in Ada County to basically turn Ada County into a Democrat bastion. Boise State is basically a key component in this, and I think this is terribly wrong to be using my taxpayer money to be supporting liberals and Democrats and putting.
Well,
them
that
in
sounds
power
like something that you should talk about with your Republican elected officials.
Well, their attitude, most of them, and this is the party establishment. Their attitude is to hide, is like an ostrich. They want to stick their head in the sand and not pretend. And unfortunately, Brad Little is not the governor to basically clean this stuff up. He's gonna run for the tall grass, and that's what I'm afraid of.
Hank, thank you for the call.
Well, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. There we have it. 632 KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning. Time to find out what's happening in your world. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
KIDO Talk Radio, your home for Fox News on the radio. When you hear Fox News in the Treasure Valley, you're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, right to Capitol Hill. That's right, the Capitol Hill. Joining us now, Rachel Sutherland. Rachel, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
So now, were you there on Saturday covering CPAC with that 2.5 hour, over 2 hour speech by the president? I know you had been there during the week. Did you have to draw on Saturday duty as well?
Yeah, I was there for the 2 hour speech. My legs crossed because you really can't leave the ballroom once the president has begun speaking because, well, you could, but you wouldn't be allowed back in. That's typical security protocol. And so a lot of people there just loving every minute of it. Really, the 2 hours went by pretty quickly because this is President Trump. It all started, when he came on stage to the lap to God Bless the USA and paused to hug an American flag, and it went on from there. And it was a wide-ranging speech, to say the least. It was his freewheeling style in which you didn't know what was going to be the next topic, everything from his inaugural crowd sizes to socialism. That was a big buzzword, Kevin, all week at CPAC. I think that they're gearing up for the 2020 election and looking at the left and the candidates and saying, okay, these are candidates who embrace socialist ideas. They're saying that if one of them were to be elected, that the United States would be in danger of becoming Venezuela. That was really kind of the overarching message of this CPAC. Every year is different. I mean, when I was there in 2016, then candidate Trump actually pulled out of CPAC because of the controversy over his candidacy. Now you go, and it's just everyone is united behind President Trump. They're starting fashion lines devoted to this president. It's almost like a Comic-Con only for conservatives. If you haven't ever been to CPAC, you want to go just to see the sights. There was one individual I saw walking around in a kangaroo outfit, complete with the little kangaroo in the pouch, saying that he's against kangaroo courts. You had people in sequins head to toe, Make America Great Again hats, not only the red hats, but ones that were bedazzled in sequins with lights blinking. I mean, this is CPAC, and he was in his element and loving every second of it.
Indeed. If you could take us a little further, is there anything seriously discussed now? Rachel, you know me as a a curmudgeon or a cynic or both. But, you have the people dressed up in costumes and, hey, we're going to CPAC and this is for young people. But was there anything really accomplished except perhaps a pep rally?
Well, CPAC is rather of a pep rally. It's also, in some years, a proving ground for those who want to run. In this case, now Republicans are starting to play defense rather than offense because they're in power now. Now they need to maintain. That's their game plan going forward. So it's all about attacking the left. It's all about you have to be with us or you're going to be with socialism. So that was the message this year. Of course, there was other conversations about pro-life issues. That's very important to the base. And gun control with the bills that were moved through the House last week. There was discussion about that as well. And all of the other types of issues that are central to conservatism. But I think this year the discussion was all about socialism, and Vice President Mike Pence, when he spoke on Friday, devoted a good portion of his speech to that as well. I talked with Matt Schlapp, who puts on this. He's the president of the American Conservative Union, and he also was talking about that and just saying that this is a real choice coming up that's facing America in the direction that they want the country to go. So, yeah, and every year, like I said, is different. But this year certainly was completely rallied around President Trump and was very much a pep rally type of atmosphere.
Matt Schlapp, who his wife Mercedes works at the White House, and of course is uses the phrase "Schlapp happens" quite a bit. So,
yeah, he's a funny guy. He's easy to talk to. He's easy to interview. He knows his stuff, and he doesn't mind tough questions either. Because I confronted him. I said, well, he was saying, well, what if one of them gets elected? I said, well, what if? Let's lay out what's going to happen here. And he said, that the country could basically not be America anymore. I mean, that's what Vice President Mike Pence was saying, is that if we embrace the philosophies of the far left, that America will no longer be America. And the base really was embracing that message as well. So I think as we move forward, going into it's hard to believe, but the first debates among the Democratic candidates will just be a few months away. That's going to be a big part of the discussion. The wall, obviously, a big part of the discussion as well, immigration, and the president also announcing during this 2-hour speech that he was going to sign an executive order telling colleges, basically, and universities around the country, if you have public money, government money, you're going to need to allow a diversity of voices on campus. No more of this running off conservative speakers. There was one they brought up on stage that had been punched in the face on the campus in California, and he said that you'll stand to lose money if you don't allow these speakers.
Rachel Sutherland, hopefully you'll get some rest.
Oh, I feel fine. I'm totally rested. It was kind of energizing being there. I mean, it's always interesting to see, and I don't mind the extra duty to cover it.
Yes, ma'am. You have a great day. Thank you, Rachel.
You too, Kevin.
Our great friend Rachel Sutherland. Remember, when you hear Fox News on the radio, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio here in the Treasure Valley. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And this is an oldie but a goodie that happened at CPAC. Oh, it would help if I actually turned on the volume there. Let's try it again.
If you tell a joke, if you're sarcastic, if you're having fun with the audience, if you're in live television with millions of people and 25,000 people in an arena, and if you say something like, Russia, please, if you can, get us Hillary Clinton's email.
That was so funny.
Please, Russia, please.
That was so funny. Russia, if you're listening, get us the emails. That was so funny.
Please get us the emails. Please.
I think his voice got a little high there. Hear this? Lock her up. Oh, that's so funny. Love that from Donald Trump there. Lock her up. An oldie but a goodie. All right, where do we go from here? Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. I'd like to get a little serious with you. And this was a conversation I had over the weekend with a couple people watching the Idaho legislature. Now, the Joint Finance Affairs Committee, JFAC, has approved Medicaid expansion, which means that now the state will be able to tap into all that free money. But in its infinite wisdom, because we're going into an area that we don't know about, kind of like the last time we did this, it was Obamacare. You'll find out what it's going to cost us once you vote for it. Thank you, Nancy Pelosi. So here we have Medicaid expansion. And you know right now there is no cap on how much money Medicaid expansion will cost the state of Idaho. I sound like Tea Party Bob. I sound like Tea Party Bob, who for 2 years said Medicaid expansion could, in fact, bankrupt the fastest growing state in the country. How does that happen? Well, you remember Prop 2. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you voted for Prop 2 because you have a heart and you say, I want people covered. I want the 60,000 people that are covered, that are not covered by anything because of the greedy, grubby insurance companies, because of the hospitals making an excessive amount of money. I want those people covered, and I'm willing to pay for it, or I'm willing to have Ray Amaya or Kevin Miller or Billy, Willie, and Timmy pay for it. Right? Oh, it gets better. It was only supposed to be 60,000. Now we're hearing from Bannock Street in Boise, could be 70, 80, even 100,000 people that will be eligible to get government benefits. And currently, right now, there is no limit on the amount of money the state will be on the hook for. Could cost the state $1 billion. Now, wait a minute, Kevin Miller. You silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. Kevin Miller, the federal government is going to send us 90% of the money, right? Woo, free money, Obama. Thank you, Obama. Oh, wait a minute. At any time, that 90% could be flipped to 50%. Or to 10%, and the state would be on the hook for, I don't know, additional millions of dollars. So one day, somebody in Washington could say, we're out of money, Idaho and all you other states, it's going to be 50-50. You remember the great Obama bait and switch, one of many? Hey, I'm going to put new police officers out. We're going to federally fund local municipalities. You're going to hire police officers. All right, a cop on every block, everybody. And then 2 years later, they withdrew the funding. Police departments had to either pick up the funds or get rid of officers. Back to Medicaid expansion. This hits you. This is one of the most crucial yet probably boring things that we'll talk about. It's not as sizzling as Donald Trump on CPAC or the media saying, impeach him, impeach him, impeach him. I guess we'll talk about this with Dave Petzo coming up. However, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, there are two things that bother me about this. Actually, three things. Why don't we do this? We've got the Sean Hannity update coming up. Let's get back to this, and then we'll probably carry it over with Dave Petzo. Remember, you can always join the conversation. Very simply, it's you can text us. I don't know how you do that. You can email me, Kevin at KIDOTalkRadio.com. You can email me on Facebook or what have you, instant message. But we like to hear what you have to say. The unbridled power of the spoken word is always appreciated here at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So coming up next, we do want to continue to hold the legislature accountable. And you won't believe what they're up to, as opposed to what they should be doing. That's next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Rolling right along, not one but two stations. KIDO Talk Radio heard in the state of New Hampshire, of Utah, and just about everywhere else. Thanks to the KIDO Talk Radio app. If you'd like that, all you have to do is go to our website. You guessed it, KIDOTalkRadio.com. Sign up for the app and the newsletter, and it is the best ever, right, Mr. President?
We have people in Congress Right now, we have people in Congress that hate our country. And you know that. And we can name every one of them if they want. They hate our country.
They hate our country. Hey, thank you very much, Mr. President. By the way, let's get to three things that we hope that the legislature will figure out. Number one, a cap on the spending for Medicaid expansion. I think we should have and some states have adopted this spending cap thing where you can only spend so much. So that if we were looking at expanding and, let's say, buying the HP campus, which we did for, $140 million plus expenses, plus taxes, plus everything else, that wouldn't be the budget buster that it was last session. Wouldn't that be nice? Now, Medicaid expansion, again, it is a tough thing. I mean, we've had people talk about this again and again. Should there be a cap on how much money the state will be liable for? Because it started at 60,000, now it's at 80,000 people, could be up to 120,000 people that are eligible for Medicaid expansion. And look, we don't want to deny anybody medical care. The most frustrating thing is when you pay for medical care, and then all of a sudden the greedy, grubby insurance companies or the non-caring people that are the administration types determine what type of medical care you're going to get. That's the frustrating thing, I think, about medical care. But the legislature should take a look at that. But before we get to that, there was a controversy that happened over the weekend. Janice McGeachin, lieutenant governor, she posed for a picture with the 3%ers, the real 3%ers. And all of a sudden, she's being denounced because the 3%ers had 3 fingers up in their ears. 3 fingers, right? And because they showed the sign of the 3, some people said that's a symbol of the white supremacist groups. I don't know what else is. Maybe Fonzie giving us the thumb or A or sticking up one finger. Not that finger is another sign of white supremacy. So now she's been denounced. And I'm thinking, don't we have better things to do? And by the way, that night, as I'm watching the Milwaukee Bucks beat the LA Lakers, an NBA guy hit a 3 and used those 3 fingers. So either it's a symbol for the NBA 3-pointers or it's a symbol for white supremacy. But to denounce the lieutenant governor, really? We'll get into that coming up. And then where is the repeal of the grocery tax? Why hasn't anybody brought that up? Kevin, don't bring that up. It makes us uncomfortable. That's our job. Speaking of getting to work safely and on time, 107.5 FM, 580 AM.